Okay. And so you spent several years investing in single family and multifamily. And at a certain point, you wanted to diversify. So you started looking at different options and stumbled upon agriculture. Now, so for most people, myself included, I would, if I stumbled across an opportunity that I knew nothing about, I'd be like, I don't know. I don't know if that's right for me. Seems risky. Don't know enough about it. What was it about the opportunity or agriculture in general that really drew you to it? Because it sounds like those opportunities weren't easy to find early on. So you probably had to do some digging. So what was it that made you think, oh, there's an opportunity here?
So, as I mentioned, I traveled a lot, got to see a lot of the developing world, places where people don't take their food for granted, and therefore they don't take farming for granted. So if you look at agriculture and real estate, in particular, those are two industries that touch every single person on earth, whether you realize it or not. And I think we're all pretty familiar with real estate because, we go home, we live in a house or an apartment or whatever, and people are pretty familiar that they can invest in real estate at some level or another. But agriculture is one that touches every single one of us because we all eat. The demographics are very compelling because the world population continues to grow. So just like housing, people are going to need a place to live. People are going to need to eat. And the other thing that's interesting about demographics is populations become more wealthy. They tend to consume more protein, more calories. So that also drives up agriculture and investment class. And when I started researching it, saw that not only was just a growth industry, it's also the returns that you can get from agriculture are competitive with other forms of real estate. And when it comes right down to it, agriculture is a form of real estate. It's based on land primarily, although we're doing some interesting things like indoor agriculture, which involves a land component, a real estate component, but not necessarily the same as going out and investing, in 1,000 acres of wheat farm or, raw land, that sort of thing. So we, for a lot of different reasons, we liked agriculture. We started looking, when we first started the company, we were afraid that there would be not too many opportunities because the other side of the investing equation is our deal flow. And that started out, we were worried about that because we thought, well, farmers all over the country have guaranteed USDA subsidized loans and those sorts of things, which is true. However, those type of kind of guaranteed loans and financing are really optimized for traditional farmers, row crop farmers. So people growing corn and soy and wheat and things like that, as you might, as you drive through the Midwest US, people, that's sort of what they associate with farming. But it turns out there's a lot more farming and we've kind of opened our eyes to it. And we like to open our investors' eyes to different types of agriculture and agribusinesses they can invest in.
I wanted to ask something really quick. I wanted to go back to what you said earlier, that farming is not something that it was typically, and maybe still not today, because Annie and I haven't heard about, but that doesn't mean anything. But you said that it's not easy for people to invest in farming. Why is that?
It's just not an asset class that comes to most people's minds. So, and it's also fairly new as an investment vehicle. So the first sort of people or entities actually to invest in agriculture were some institutions back in the 80s. Institutions like university endowments and pension funds started buying up farmland because it's not correlated with the stock market. So it was fairly safe, low volatile, steady returns, steady appreciation. It's inflation based, just like real estate. We all know that, yes, you have market cycles, but in the trend, the overall trend is upward as inflation continues to shrink the value of dollars, but increase the value of assets. And that's why we all, as real estate investors, want to hold those assets. But the same thing is exactly true with farming.
Interesting. And so, okay. So this is fascinating. And so I'm sure you talk to people all the time and potential investors who know very little about this, so myself included. And so give us your high level, overview, your pitch, your spiel about, what these opportunities are all about and why people should consider investing in them.
Yeah. So I mentioned the demographics, everyone has to eat. and the population continues to grow. So that's sort of the underlying thesis. We're in some very niche spaces of agriculture, and although people are able to invest, to Julie's point, people are able to invest in like farmland REITs, publicly traded. That's one option, which, you can certainly do that. These funds hold large swaths of farmland that they've bought up, and there's some economies of scale there, and they pay a fairly steady dividend. The problem with investing in the public markets is that you're investing in the public markets, and they're susceptible to market corrections, and they're not necessarily. You're taking an uncorrelated asset and you're putting it in a correlated investment vehicle, publicly traded stocks. So that's why we're a not big favor of necessarily that vehicle. But the kind of focus areas that we like, one is grass-fed livestock. So if you go into the supermarket, you'll see, your hamburger meat, and you'll see grass-fed hamburger meat, or grass-fed, grass-finished hamburger meat, or beef, or lamb, and you'll see that those particular products generally tend to get a premium. They have various health benefits, lower fat, lower cholesterol, those sorts of things. And we like it because we can get because it's a premium product, the prices are higher. They're not necessarily correlated with the overall commodity prices associated with cattle, that we're able to produce nice, steady returns for our investors. One of the other sort of niches that we like is indoor agriculture. And this is a rapidly growing investment field. So when I talk about indoor agriculture, there's kind of two primarily parts or components of it. One is large scale greenhouses, where people are putting them in sort of rural areas and growing produce regionally that wouldn't normally grow in that climate. So people growing tomatoes and peppers in the Midwest and leafy greens, when most of those products are grown on the West Coast, out there close to you guys, and in places like Salinas Valley, and we're growing it closer to where it's consumed in the Midwest or East Coast. And so that's saving food miles, consumption, saves water when it's produced. And right now, most of the investments in that space are from institutional investors. So we found some deal flow that is a kind of a smaller scale and enables us to bring in investors at a much lower investment minimum than, say an institutional private equity firm who's investing $50-100 million in one of these large scale farms.